Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for another workshop in the Shape Rotator Hackathon. This time it's less a focus on the building tracks and more a focus on what you're going to do potentially outside of the hackathon. So we have Gil here with us to deliver a workshop on product market fit and go to market and more, clearly. So beyond just what you're building in the hackathon, I hope you're going to find this workshop really interesting, not just for the context of what you're building now, but also in the future as well, especially if you're planning on going or applying to go into the accelerator following on. So apologies for the delay getting started. We were just sorting some technical difficulty things, but we're ready to go now. So I will hand over and we can get learning.
All right, a pleasure to meet everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Let's get started. And I believe you could see my screen, yes?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you for your patience. All right, so excited to be here today. This has been it's been amazing kind of being involved with this hackathon and the accelerator from the beginning. Let me give a quick background on myself and we can jump into the meat of what's fun here. Okay, so who am I? Hi, I'm Gil, executive founder. I'm an investor. I'm an ecosystem builder. Currently, I kind of operate in two spaces. For the last 4 years, I've been running Stanford's Blockchain Accelerator, which is a program that's kind of a collaboration between the student alumni groups incubating Stanford projects and Stanford alum in the blockchain space. We've had a ton of great teams come out of there, 85 plus, I believe, including Caldera, Halliday, Nexus Labs, Zero Gravity, and a bunch of others. I also co-teach a course on blockchain entrepreneurship in the engineering school, where we bring in kind of thought leaders to speak about why you should build in blockchain, where the opportunity is, where the challenges are, et cetera, and help co-lead the Blockchain Application Stanford Summit, which is an event series some of you guys may have seen. We do the biggest side event over at ETH Denver and as a pre-conference to the Stanford Blockchain Conference. While I'm not doing that, in ecosystem building, I help run with my two partners, Blockchain Builders, which is a 60 million AUM fund for the last 3 years. We invest in technical founders at the frontier of blockchain, finance, and AI. For the last 3 years, we've had a heavy focus on infrastructure, and that's kind of been shifting a little bit, and we'll get into why that is. I guess quick background on myself. Originally, I was a electrical engineering and computer science EECS guy from UCLA. I worked as an IC designer for a company called Infineon. If you guys use any of the gallium nitride chargers, the ones that say GaN on them, I helped work on that about 20 years ago. And then I kind of was doing IC design and high power, high voltage mixed signal stuff. I then switched to enterprise data infrastructure, building kind of distributed compute and big data platforms. Initially for a company called Informatica that got acquired by Salesforce. And then I started a couple of companies myself. The second of which, Accela, we were building distributed compute and big data platforms for the likes of the IRS, Veteran Affairs, JP Morgan, BP, Rolls-Royce, etc. So this was like early big data, 2010. We grew it to a team of 100, 10 million ARR, and then sold it to a company called NG Data that was building AI for digital marketing, where I ran strategy and sales. I went back to school over at Stanford and kind of ended up pivoting a little from the founder track to the investor track after kind of learning everything there was to know or that I hadn't known in terms of the Silicon Valley way of how to build startups. That's also when I found out about blockchain, got super excited. Switched to becoming a tech investor. Initially, I was an angel investor, kind of investing in quite a number of projects across blockchain, AI, and different parts of impact, specifically emerging market fintech, health tech, and the like. And, you know, in 2016, 17 was doing all the fun blockchain things like investing in ICOs and trading and mining and the like. I was also a venture partner at a fund called Preface. I was a mentor at StartX. And then after kind of starting and running these programs at Stanford, specifically the Accelerator, my partners and I, who were from Google and Coinbase and a few others, we started Blockchain Builders, where I've been investing since. part of that all happened when I went back to school, actually at Stanford in 2021, and got a degree in public policy, and that kind of took me all in on blockchain as something that I believed was required for a public good over in general. And we can get into my thesis on blockchain another time, perhaps. But let's get into blockchain product market fit and kind of how it applies to you guys, especially as technical founders, who are coming out of a hackathon. So blockchain has traditionally been very tech first, right? And the technology has worked well for the core use cases, which I think we could all agree, like payments, especially initially as the last resort, where you didn't have other options. Now that's obviously shifted, and the whole finance industry is moving on chain. But initially, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, the big use cases were payments and trading, and then everything around that: borrowing, lending, speculating. There was limited general adoption beyond that because there was, challenges on the infrastructure side from a cost, latency, usability, and interoperability perspective. And blockchain, by definition, is decentralized protocols, rely on network effects. And whenever you have these sort of frictions, you kill network effects. So, if you think about every social media platform and how they optimize for every single click, to reduce any friction whatsoever, we had quite a lot of frictions in the blockchain space, right? And worst of all, in the US, blockchain was generally illegal for most things, which meant that adoption was challenging because people didn't want to be in this dubious regulatory position. Because of that situation, blockchains were judged much more on their potential than on the actual value that they were delivering, especially in the early days when we were raising for ICOs before we had products, but even later on, right? So it's the potential of this tech innovation, the potential of community engagement, the potential of the token price. And what we saw was these huge token launches with very large FTVs. Right. So now what happened? So as the technology evolved and got significantly better and things worked, we also had these launch platforms such as Pump Fund. Now, Pump Fund democratized token launches. That meant anyone could now launch a token. And instead of having a few narratives that had strong depth to them and technical backing behind them, we ended up just with thousands upon thousands of narratives. So narratives became insufficient. We have fixed liquidity, infinite tokens. Each new token has little marginal value, right? Beyond that, blockchain, as of the last kind of 2 years, is legal. And it works, and it doesn't just work, it works very, very well, right? It's performant, it's reliable, it's cheap, it's scalable, it's interoperable. So because it can now be adopted in many more parts of our society, both as infrastructure, public goods infrastructure, digital infrastructure, as well as technology infrastructure by enterprise and consumers, there are expectations that it will be adopted. So now it's not enough just to have potential. Now the expectation in the market, by and large, both by large investors and retail investors and traders, is of actual adoption. So technology is no longer enough. And that kind of brings us to where we are today. So there's this shift to adoption, right? Sorry, we had this, right? So blockchain ventures now look much more like traditional ventures that have these composable ecosystems, right? So network effects are a prerequisite. Also, blockchain ventures generally have faster liquidity than traditional ventures. Traditional ventures take 10 to 12 years until they kind of have some sort of liquidity event. In the blockchain space, it's still in the 3 to 6 year time frame. So we still have tokens. We're still building these composable ecosystems, but there are expectations of actual adoption and network effects. So how do you build network effects, right? You need distribution to actual users. And actual, there's two types of distribution. Historically, we've had distribution by things like airdrops or people that wanted to acquire a token, not because they were necessarily going to use a protocol or platform, but because they wanted to speculate on it. And when you have infinite number of tokens and infinite narratives, that doesn't really help with the overall value accrual of a protocol, right? So airdrops don't have a great track record because people get tokens and then they just sell them as quickly as they can. ICOs are slightly better, and we're seeing a return of them because people are willing to pay for value, right? You're purchasing something. If you're purchasing something, that means that you believe that there is value in it, either for speculative value, and ideally you don't want to sell it for less, or because there's an actual value in the protocol itself, right? And then the last is, of course, real adoption. And when we talk about real adoption, whether it's again an exchange, a lending protocol, payments protocol, tokenization of various different assets. Like people are now using these protocols for real things, right? And if you want to get real adoption, how do you start, right? So ideally, you start with design partners if you're more kind of like a B2B-ish enterprise adoption, or with a set of alpha users if you're more consumer retail focused. And now we're going to chat about how do you gain real adoption. Okay. So when we think about gaining real adoption, this is something that Web 2 has spoken of quite a bit. And while the Web 3 and Web 2, or blockchain and Web 2, I know people don't like the word Web 3 anymore, are not exactly the same. There are a lot more similarities today than there were, especially in how both, again, retail and institutional investors think about these things. So my definition, and we'll get into how I've come up with it, is that product market fit is basically a product business model or customer engagement method. We'd add a protocol here as the product that consistently meets the needs of a specific customer segment or persona better than the alternative, such that they're willing to pay for it. Right? So what does this actually imply? That you have a functional product or technology, right? Remember, protocol. You have a clear customer or user segment or persona that you're targeting versus, if I build it, they will come, right? Your product or protocol solves their problem meaningfully better than alternatives, and they're willing to pay for it in some way or form, whether it's with their time, but by purchasing tokens to actually use your protocol and the like. Right, and that you've been able to validate this, right? You've been able to not just have a few people use your platform and pay for your platform, but consistently you've been able to reach them and sell to them. So this is not to be confused with the pump and dump of token. And this is tokens are a wonderful way to get customer acquisition because people like money. So if you give them tokens or you promise them the token will go up, you'll acquire a lot of users. But if you're not delivering value to them, then they churn quickly, and you kind of have a very quick high and a very quick low thereafter. And then you need to, you're left with whatever's left. So that pump and dump is not product market fit. And that viral growth on its own is not product market fit, but it's rather viral growth or some sort of significant growth coupled with retention and people consistently using your protocol or product. Right? And in crypto, it's often been challenging to differentiate between this temporary adoption for financial gain versus true value delivered. So what are some qualitative descriptions here? It's Andy Ratcliffe, who is one of the folks that coined this term, who's the founder of Benchmark and Wealthfront, says that it's a company that's proven its value hypothesis and why a user is likely to use this given product, right? And the value hypothesis identifies the features, the audience, and the business model. Steve Blank, who's kind of the author of the Lean Startup and the inventor of that approach, talks about the criticality of the value hypothesis. You're delivering value, and the growth hypothesis testing, whether a product or service is actually delivering value to these people. Eric Ries is, when a wide spread of customers resonate with the product. Alex Schultz is who was from the Meta Facebook, emphasizes non-zero retention over time. And Mark Andreessen is being able to answer like the why, the how, and the what of a product, right? But that's all nice and good. How do you quantify this? How do you know if you actually have product market fit, right? So again, the Web 2 space, which is now becoming more and more relevant in the Web 3 space, is that if you're doing something that's consumer or retail, you want organic viral growth, right? This means that people use a product, they love it so much, they get other people to use it, and they love it so much, they get other people to use it, and they continue to use it, right? They don't just use it and then drop it, because if you have high churn, you don't have product market fit. So this organic viral growth, which you can tell often, without significant marketing, people just use it and grow with it. Similar to what we saw with like Hyperliquid, is kind of one indicator. And the other is if you're more B2B focused, if you're building for enterprises, or you're building for other chains or other applications instead of to retail, then generally you want to have like 7 to 10 repeatable sales. And I use the term sales loosely because it's different in blockchain at times. But you want it to be to similar customers. So you don't want to be selling to one application that's in the gaming space, another that's in the fintech space, another that's in the social space, because they're very different. And just because one set of users is interested in your project doesn't mean that you can consistently and likely grow and sell to all of the people that are in a given sector. So if you have 7 to 10 fintech customers or payment customers because you're building infrastructure for stablecoins or for privacy for trading, if you have similar ones, then that's validation that actually you are uniquely solving this problem better than others, and that the sector itself wants to use your product because it is better and is willing to pay for it, right? So it's you want repeatable sales or projects to similar customer personas, right? And a couple of other metrics to have, right? So if retention over time asymptotes to percentage that's common to an industry, that's going to be different. It might be 30% for e-commerce, 80% for social media. Like that's indicative of product market fit. Andrew Chen, again, this is more on the B2B sales side of things, right? You want your lifetime value to be 3 times greater than your customer acquisition costs, or 2% churn, right? So like, again, these are different indicative metrics that you can use. So how do you get there? And there are 2 schools of thought on how to find product market fit. One is you start with a customer persona, right? You start with a specific sector, you start with a specific customer persona, and you keep iterating on the product that you're going to build for them. And this is heavily rooted in design thinking methodology. Right, so you interview a lot of people from that specific sector, you understand their pains, their gaps, and then you build for them. There's a higher probability of some success here because you're building for a need that you've validated is there for a specific persona. But you don't necessarily have a technical moat because anyone can do that, right? Anyone can go and interview 1,000 people, find out what their problems are, and try to build for them quickly. So these are things like DoorDash, shall we say. Now, the value proposition for these types of companies are that they're very much based on go-to-market skills and capability. The other is you start with a technology. You start with some sort of innovation, and that's where a lot of you guys are, especially building in a hackathon, especially kind of starting with IC3 research, right? And then you iterate over the different customer personas to find one that has where your technology uniquely solves their challenge or problem. And that's much more the lean startup methodology. Success is not guaranteed because there's a much higher moat here. Success is not guaranteed, but if you are successful, you have a much higher moat because you have a technology that no one else has. Now, again, in blockchain, this is a little bit harder because a lot of these technologies are open source, so anyone can kind of pick up and fork. So really, you need to not just have a given technology, you need a team that is able to continuously innovate and continuously like solve these problems and iterate on these technologies better than anyone else. So how do you iterate kind of on this market idea? So one is, and this kind of is across the board, interview, or be an expert in a given sector, right? So you want to talk to prospective users and customers as much as possible, put things out there as quickly as possible, and see what works and see what resonates with people. You also want to think about kind of your initial potential markets that you're going to go after, right? So you can draft a list of potential use cases for kind of the technologies that you guys are working on, potential customer personas, and markets overall, and think, does this technology solve a given problem, not just slightly better, 20% better, 30% better, but ideally you want to be 5 to 10 times better. Because if someone has an existing solution that they're already using, right? If I'm trading my memes on Pump Fun and their network effects there, and it's great, why am I going to leave, right? If I'm trading on my centralized exchanges, why am I going to leave, right? Why do people go to Hyperliquid, right? So it was able to offer specific things that no one else had, such as perps, in a manner that was significantly better than anyone else. right, or polymarket or the like. Right. So does this problem solve it significantly better? How big is the market? You don't want to go after a market that's really small, but also if the market is too big, often it's going to be highly competitive, right? So how competitive is the market? Now, one of the interesting strategy things that's come out of the lean startup methodology is that you don't necessarily want to go after the biggest market first. Why? Because it's a very large market and it's very difficult to capture a very large market. And often that very large market is going to be highly competitive as well. So what one of the approaches to winning is actually to find many adjacent similar markets to one another. So if you're talking about prediction markets, okay, I'm going to go and build prediction market platform, right? It's hard to just start with a generalized prediction market platform. It's a lot easier if you start with sports in prediction markets and politics in prediction markets, and then you go from sports to gaming to iteratively building one after the other additional markets that you can win at because you're focused on those specific markets. So what about general layer ones and layer twos, right? Because traditionally in blockchain, we actually haven't been an industry that's been focused on the specific and the niche. We've generally been fairly generalist, right? And my take on this is that general blockchains were much easier to build earlier on because there was less competition and fewer options. But also you wanted as big an ecosystem as possible so you could shill your token. You wanted to create these network effects. The market itself, blockchain, was relatively small. So if you wanted validators and you wanted applications, given how small the overall market was, you were trying to enlarge that market as big as possible so that it made sense and the TAM was large enough that people would get excited and want to be part of the ecosystem. But it's much harder now, both because we have, I say too many chains. There's never too many chains. There's too many chains doing the same thing, right? If too many chains are doing the same thing, then it's highly competitive. And if there are too many tokens, then people aren't necessarily as loyal as they once were, perhaps. Right. So now you get loyalty from actual users or from niche specific users that you love because you uniquely solve their challenge and because you're focused. So the lesson from Web2 companies is that in a highly competitive world, you need to focus. And this has been true of most technology and like database platforms that you have in the Web2 space. It's been true of Salesforce itself, which started off as a CRM and then became an overall platform. Snowflake focused initially on very specific niches and verticals, and then kind of expanded out. But same with Amazon, same with Uber. All right, they all started with a focused niche and then built beyond that. You have limited funds, you have limited time, and if you try to do everything, then you're going to be mediocre at everything, and the people that are focusing will beat you. Now, if everyone is trying to do everything, which is what it was like in the early days, then the best tech wins, and the best tech is the one that can do as much as possible. But given that it's a much crowded space now, much more crowded space now, and there are people that are focusing, those that are focusing will beat you on their areas of focus. Right, so what do focused go-to-market approaches look like then, right? And there's broadly two of them. One is you build...
Was the intention to stop sharing your screen? Because your screen has disappeared. Okay, wasn't sure if it was...
Sorry. Let me... Is this working?
Not yet. Or at least can someone else confirm in chat if I'm just looking at a weird view, because I have the host views, so maybe I see things differently. Nope. Oh,
no. Nope. Okay, what did I do here? How did I? Let me try this again. I'm just gonna enter in again.
Okay, see you in a sec. Okay, nice. Thanks everyone for reporting. Oh, kills like frozen and stayed on stage. Sorry for technical difficulties, guys. Mm.
All right, we're
Ooh,
back.
yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great.
Nice. It wasn't on for long. I just wasn't sure if it was intentional, so I didn't want to.
Yeah. No, thank you. So did you guys see the general layer ones and layer twos?
Yeah, we saw the start of the slide, and then it was like midway through.
Okay. Okay. Right. Right. It's just harder now because because of blockchain's actual success and adoption, and that there are so many more people building in our sector now. It's significantly harder because the people that focus on specific sectors will tend to solve the problems for those sectors better than those that aren't. Um, Okay, so the two ways to think about how do you build a focused go-to-market approach is one, and we're starting to see this much more, and there's some controversy around this, is first you build an app, you get distribution, and then you become a chain, right? And we see this with Hyperliquid, with Uniswap, with Polymarket, with Tempo, right, where you get your distribution first, and now now once you have a large number of users that are captive, you're able to bring other app developers to build on your chain or on your ecosystem or your platform for that same set of users. Okay. The other is that you build tech for specific sectors, right? So you still build a more generalizable protocol, but it's for a given sector. So you're not building the app yourself. You're still just building the tech infrastructure, but you're building it with specific sectors in mind and specific technological advantages and feature sets that are going to be unique to those specific sectors. You get design partners for those sectors. You heavily support those sectors, and that gives you distribution, and their success gives you distribution, right? And you can see this with many of the chains today that have very clear focuses on this on specific sectors that they're investing heavily in. And it's Arbitrum, which is kind of tech forward financial orgs, Canton, which is targeting more large and slow financial orgs, Alio, which is targeting institutional privacy, Tron, which always kind of targeted this consumer emerging market space, especially on payments. Mega ETH kind of had more of a consumer approach. Near is on AI. Virtuals is agentic AI. Chain for agentic AI. Kite AI, agentic AI, right? Specifically on like agentic payments and identity. Right, and Monad says that they're general, but and Monad is a high performance chain. But we could look like where are they actually spending their money and on ecosystem building and events and things like that, and you can see that actually they've done a bit more kind of also in like the trading space and others and tokenization side of things. So what are the pros and cons of this app first versus sector first? Right, so if you're app first, then you have to build a good app, and that might not be necessarily your greatest strength, right? This is hard. It's hard to build an application that a large number of users will use, right, and will deliver value for them. Also, if you build the app and your long-term play is that you want to be a protocol or a platform, then other people can't build that same app, and they're not going to build the competitor to the app because, like, you built the thing, right? Hype chain, no one else is going to try to build a perp dex on Hype chain because there's Hyperliquid, right? They're obviously going to be the big player there, right? So that means that only adjacent apps remain for the ecosystem, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of adjacent apps that can be built, but that's kind of potentially one of the cons. The pros is that you have much faster validation of product market fit, right? Because you very quickly see, like, are people using your product? It's not like, are you getting startups to try to build on your chain, but they might not have product market fit and they might die soon. It's actual users or enterprises or other decentralized applications chains that are using your product itself, right? So you have this fast validation cycle, and as they use it, your long-term viability becomes comes much faster, right? So it's validated much faster. Also, if you're successful, your strong distribution makes adoption by other apps very attractive, right? So 2-3 years ago, the number of Twitter followers used to be the big flex because that was an audience that you could help other startups potentially reach. But now that people care about adoption and not just interest, what you actually care about is users and real users. And the best way to get real users is if you build something that they're using. And you can then take these real users and bring these real users to all of the other applications that build on your protocol. Right? The other is going sector first, right? So you're not going to build your own app first. You are gonna build some sort of infrastructure layer potentially. But here you want to have meaningfully unique features that make you highly competitive in a given sector. Okay, good. Right. So the cons are you need to convince devs to build on your chain in a competitive space, right? But it is a very competitive space. We have three to five different privacy chains and then different privacy solutions. We have a ton of folks trying to focus on DeFi, right? We have I mentioned 4 or 5 different AI chains, right? So even there, it's like thinking, okay, even within the niche, how do you focus even more on a specific niche within that sector where you can capture those specific people that are trying to build in that space because you're uniquely providing something that they don't have, or you're doing it significantly better, right? And the other con is like your success is going to be determined by the success of the people that are building on your platform. So if it's a bunch of new devs, it could be great, but there's uncertainty there. It could be great because it's a net new market that people haven't been able to build on before. If it's existing dApps and others, then you have a much easier chance of validating that actually they're there. Right now, the pros are that there's a broader design space. From the get-go, you can have significantly more people building on your chain because they're not waiting necessarily for there to be existing distribution because you're just a chain, right? So you can start off potentially with a larger ecosystem if you're able to get enough of these really large projects building on you. So when you're trying to now decide between like which sector to focus on, should you diversify focus? Maybe you should try multiple different areas of focus at the same time. And no, that's not focusing, right? So the reason it's generally not recommended to try multiple focus areas at the same time, unless again you have significant money and money isn't an issue. You don't know if the limited traction you have is because you're not spending enough time or money on a given sector, or because they're the wrong customers or users. Right. So it just takes you longer to figure this out. Whereas if you went all in on a given sector or area of focus, then you can fail fast and iterate to the next one. Right. And if you have limited resources, generally you want to try and figure it out as quickly as possible. So are general chains bad? No, not at all. Right. They're just hard, especially if they're successful, because if they're successful, they get pulled into multiple different directions by all the different sectors beneath them. And we see this heavily with Ethereum now, which is getting pulled into a lot of different directions, whether it's the more idealistic cypherpunk ethos, whether it's institutions, whether it's L2s, whether it's the L1, whether it's being kind of a store of value, so to speak, in Ethereum itself, or a settlement layer, right, or just block space. Right. So that said, there are also other areas of focus that you can rally around, not just a sector. You can rally around a cultural movement, a company, and the like, right? And these all give you network effects. And ultimately, what you're trying to get is network effects. And you build network effects better by focusing on a small group of people that are tightly loyal to you and work with each other and will stay on your protocol. And then you can kind of grow from them to others. Right. So you need to build a cult. And if you're going to build a cult, it's easier to do it when people are similar. So the other thing to consider here is founder market fit. Right. And founder market fit is really like, is your team composition optimized for success? Now, for a given hackathon, you guys are most likely technical founders here. You're not going to necessarily have everything you need at this stage, and that's fine. Right. But ideally, if you're thinking about a venture and what's the team composition to optimize for success, it's technical skills. You can solve the hard technical problems to give you a competitive moat. It's sector-specific experience. Know who you're building for, know what their needs are and how to reach them. And it's management experience, right? To understand venture strategy, how you build, who you build for, what to build, how to hire, how to manage your team, how to raise funds, etc. Right. So the more sector experience you have on your team, the easier it will be for you to understand who you're building for and to build the right thing for them. Right. You could have the best technology in the world, but if you're not building for a given use case, then it won't necessarily be adopted. Right. So if you have this on your team, then it'll be easier to get design partners to anticipate pains and solutions and just to iterate quickly. So now here we are in the hackathon, right? What are the main things that are being judged on this hackathon? So there's a 2-week hackathon. Obviously, our expectations are aligned here. We don't expect you to be interviewing 1,000 people. We expect you to build, right? So the criteria are really going to be, one is your technical rigor, right? What is the implementation quality and the research engagement itself, right, with these 14 research projects? Have you incorporated the research into your project? Have you built something innovative? Does it work? Et cetera. Right. The next is product thinking. Right. Is there an actual problem or solution that you're building for? Now, we don't expect it to have product market fit because, again, it's a 2-week hackathon. But are you thinking of a clear problem or pain that this research and your project itself is able to uniquely solve meaningfully better? Right. So, what problem are you solving? For whom? How well does it solve it? And how much better are you than alternatives? Market opportunity, this is just going to be like general research, again, because we don't expect to interview 1,000 people at this point, right? So like, is there a market for this product or project, right? How important is this problem? What validation do you have about the problem and the market? And this is stuff that the internet, Google, and ChatGPT or Claude can help you with. Right. And last is the team and fit and your team skill sets drive coachability. What experience do you have in the technical domains and in the sector in general? So what's next? Once this is done, a number of these teams will be part of the IC3 Accelerator, where we're going to really spend 10 weeks taking you from kind of like technical innovation and helping you build out your product strategy, your product market fit strategy, your go-to-market strategy, and actually like build a venture. And we'll go into much more detail into like what a blockchain venture cycle looks like. Now we've got 17 minutes left. Why don't I'll do a couple more slides and then I'll pause for questions if anyone wants to chime in and ask. So this is like a preview of some of the content that's covered. Right, if you think about a company, whether it's you that's building a company or an investor that's looking to invest in a company, there are multiple types of risk. And your job is to build, to hire, and to raise capital to de-risk your company. Right. So there's the founder risk. Are you the right founders to build this? The technical sector, management expertise. Are the founders going to break up because there's some fight over equity or decisions, or do they know each other? Have they worked with each other before? Will you be able to attract and retain key talent, or are you a toxic individual? Hopefully not. Right. And will you be able to manage your financial runway appropriately so that you don't run out of money before you actually solve a problem? Right. There's a technology risk. Does it work? Is it better than competition? Does it create value? Is there continuous moat? Are there compliance or security considerations here? There's market risk. If you're too early, that's just as good as being wrong. Right. So does a market exist now, or will it exist by the time you actually build this? Is it viable? Is it large? Is it growing? Is it overcrowded, competitive? Can you win? And then there's a go-to-market side, which is, do you have yourselves, or will you be able to hire into the team the skills to acquire and keep users and customers? Right? Will you be able to support them at scale? Will you guys be thought leaders in this space? Right? It's not enough to have a good idea, a good product. To win, often you need to have the best or one of the top 2 or 3 best protocols or products that are solving a specific problem for a specific set of users or customers. And just like a quick look at what the life cycle could look like, right? So there's like the angel phase, which is kind of like where you guys are now. It's all about founder, there's a CEO and a CTO. It's all about founder risk, pre-product validation, and technology risk, right? You want to prove this technology feasibility. At the pre-seed stage, now you're raising money. You might hire a couple of engineers to support you here. But you're trying to validate initial market traction here. and that your MVP works, and that you're actually solving the problem for someone, right? Ideally, someone is willing to use and pay for what you have. The seed stage is now here trying to prove this value hypothesis and have indicators for product market fit. So that's, you want to see this viral growth. You're going to continue iterating on the product. You're going to try and sell to those 7 to 10 different protocols, chains, users, etc. At the at the A stage, or at this point ICO stage, you're really trying to prove your growth hypothesis here, right? So you're going to raise money to prove not just that it works for a number of people, but that you're able to like scale this to a large number of users. And if you have confidence in this, then your ICO and token launch is the right time for you to be incentivizing people to acquire your token, because it's a great carrot for incentivizing customer acquisition, but you need to make sure that you'll have retention, and you find that out beforehand, right? You want to have like unit economics, market size, and or repeatable sales. And then kind of as you go into the B and C stage, if you don't ICO or TGE, then you're just continuing to grow there. And that's kind of like what the life cycle looks like, assuming you don't die along the way. So I'm going to pause here, and happy to take any questions.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A tab. So the first one was a couple of minutes ago, actually, so still quite relevant to the bits you've just been talking about. And it was specifically, can solo teams apply for the accelerator? So that is like a question specific to the accelerator, but also to expand on that, could you talk about some of the considerations one might make at an early stage, whether being a solo, like kind of things to think about being a solo founder, bringing people in. Obviously, at this venture stage table, you've got kind of the roles that you have in your company, and at the very top, there's only 2 people, supposedly, if you've got one CTO. Yeah. One CEO. Can you talk a bit about the thought processes behind the people you bring in and the people you need versus the ones that are kind of optional, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Great question. So if you asked me a year or 2 ago, I probably would have said no. Not because it's impossible to succeed as a solo founder. It's not. It's just risky and hard. And being a founder is hard. And when things get hard, the easy option is to stop doing them. Also, you have no one that is kind of like questioning you or your judgment, right? And then the last bit is that from an investor perspective, there's often risk involved, right? Because part of building a company is you need to be able to work well with others. And if you can't convince someone else to join you and work on a project, then there's potential risk there. So it's not that I've never looked at or invested in solo founders. We have. There's a level and expectation on everything else that needs to be significantly higher for a solo founder. Now, in today's world where we have vibe coding or synthetic code development, it's a lot easier. But again, I would say the expectations are higher as well. So if you're going to come in as a solo founder, you need to have built something that shows both clear innovation as well as like early traction. And I'd say that's probably true both for both for like in general, starting a company and raising funds, as well as for the accelerator, right? The expectations are just significantly higher if it's just you.
Nice and interesting. And I think specific to the actual accelerator itself, like the Shape Rotate one, out after the hackathon, there is nothing, again, there are no rules about being in a team of X number of people. So yes, you can apply for the accelerator, but some interesting insight as well there about whether you should or whether you should consider getting some other people on board early, obviously dependent on the situation you're in. So thank you for answering that one. We've got a load of questions from Andrew, so I'll make my way through them, but also if anyone else in the room has any questions they want to put over on Q&A, then do that. We have 10 minutes left, so plenty of time to get through. Andrew has asked a question first, again, about team formation and the team that you've got. Is a strong team that works together a good moat / defensible edge?
So yes, but it depends on what you mean by strong team, right? So I would say and I'll answer this as part of kind of your follow-up question, the emerging agent slash AI oriented world. So what we're seeing is that there's kind of this cleavage now into two types of companies that are able to succeed really well and potentially not be cannibalized by the big four foundation model companies, right? And this tends to be so. 5 to 10 years ago, technology was often the biggest moat that you could have. Um, and if you had kind of, because technology was such a strong moat, because it was such a game changer, if you went into an industry, you could get hire a bunch of people that were sector experts and disrupt an industry. And whether it's the taxi industry, whether it's the supply chain industry, whatnot, like you were able to take this strong technological capability. Now, in many ways, the foundation models actually invert this on its head. All right, so anyone can now leverage these foundation model companies. So where is this technical moat now? And actually, in many ways, it's in distribution, right? So yes, you need strong people, but what we're seeing is like these niche companies that have very strong reach into given markets. Are able to build specifically for that market, are able to capture data sets that are unique to that market. And again, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's legal, whether it's supply chain, finance, etc. If you are on the ground with the people that have the specific needs, like the general foundation model company can't solve everyone's problem to the nth degree. It can create a framework and a technology that can be used to solve it. So distribution becomes really important, and experience in given sectors becomes really important. The other flip side of that is that, yes, if you're able to build kind of a research-focused organization, there are many verticals within kind of the research space that are still open for grabs. Right, and just because they're hard and they're new, and whether it's robotics, and visual models, whether it's specific models that are like physics informed. There's just an incredible amount of data that is still missing there, and models themselves that are missing there, whether it's like complex reasoning type thing. So if you have a really strong team of researchers where you guys are kind of at the very tip of the spear, then yes, we're seeing really successful companies in that space as well. Now, of course, if you're able to combine a good team and a good research team and sector experience, then that's your dream team. But I would argue that a strong team cannot just be a moat. Like it's an incredibly valuable one, especially in blockchain, where many of these technologies are open sourced or open for people to use and to fork. So you need to be able to continue to innovate beyond just like the initial innovation that you have, and to continue to be the best people in a given sector, whether it's homomorphic encryption, ZK, crypto economics, scalability, privacy, and the like.
So we had a question come in below as well, but we still, I think, have time to cover the others. An interesting question actually that Andrew asked, especially pertaining to very, very early stage projects. What's a good customer size and kind of framework for making those very early stage decisions? Because I presume if you have 3 users and they're saying, "Oh, we want this," you can't take them for their word and then go directly in that direction, because they might just be a very niche kind of user base that isn't representative.
Yeah, so great question. Again, if you're thinking about more of a like if you're going to be selling to other applications versus users, that this is more similar to B2B. You don't want to try going after the biggest ones that like selling to Anchorage or Galaxy Digital necessarily, unless you kind of get investment money from them as well. The reason why is because it's just going to take a long time, and they're not going to necessarily adopt your technology because it's unproven. So it's a lot easier for you to sell to like smaller players first, gain validation, and then use that validation to start incrementally selling to bigger players. If you're selling to kind of more consumer retail, your average users, ideally you can get like 50 to 100 people within your network that you can talk to, and what you're really trying to do here is just interview as much as possible, right? So when both we teach coursework on entrepreneurship and in general, like we're interviewing 100 people a week, if not more than that, trying to validate if something is of use. Now, once you've interviewed these people, you could try to get them to start using your kind of early product and build a relationship with them. So that's kind of more in the 50 to 100 hundreds range initially to get started, to kind of validate. You don't want to go as big as possible because right now, if you talk to people and you're not able to build a relationship with them and they hear about your product and they try it and it's crap, then they might not talk to you again. But if it's people that kind of you're asking for feedback on and you have a bit more of a relationship for them, it's a little easier. I think, yeah, I'm seeing Andrew was also asking about, where a place that we should have more commons. So I think this is an excellent question. I think right now the digital world as we know it is by and large owned by private entities, and that is problematic. Right, so it's if I open up my web browser, I go into Google, I'm in the Google world being advertised and being monetized by Google. If I go to Amazon, like I'm obviously being monetized by them, by Meta, by Instagram. So we have very little of the internet as we know it right now is actually open and neutral in some ways. And the problem is that these companies are highly addictive because they've optimized for attention seeking. So if you try to build like a decentralized social that is not highly addictive, well, by definition, it's not highly addictive. So it's hard to gain as much traction as the highly addictive ones. But I think especially as we transition into AI infrastructure and agentic infrastructure, this lends itself very, very well, as well as we're already seeing financial infrastructure. So I think the finance industry is being disrupted in a very good way because financial infrastructure is now moving on chain, and there are people that complain about, oh, it's just these large banks that are now putting their assets on chain. That's still good because if every asset is now tokenized, it's still composable, it's still more liquid, and anyone can still build for a large set of these like liquid tokenized assets versus in the current state they can't. On the AI side, I think we look at like MCP, A to A, UCP. Like these were not built by blockchain companies; they were built by the Googles and the Anthropics of the world. We should be building for this. And I think part of the challenge that we've had in blockchain is that we've focused initially on trying to build agentic infrastructure where everything is within the blockchain space. It's like, I've got my agent protocol here. You can build an agent on my protocol. You can create an ID for it on my protocol. You can pay for it on my protocol, and everything will work in my protocol, versus going to where users actually are. So OpenClaw was obviously a great tailwind for here, but I think we need to be building kind of like real easy to use interoperable infrastructure that someone who is non-blockchain will be excited to use and leverage. And that's probably the single greatest thing that we can do. There's a ton more, but yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit on that.
Okay. Giuliano has asked a really interesting question. Unfortunately, we have reached the very, very end of the session. So we're not going to have time to cover it here because I have a hard stop, so I need to close this session to open another one. But Giuliano, I will ask Gil to... Gil, are you in the Discord?
I can join the Discord, and also I'm seeing the questions here, so I'll just I'll copy and paste these in my notes.
I think the second question was like the simplified version without the additional context. A really interesting question, especially considering everything that you've just said. But in the meantime, everyone, apologies for the short delay we had at the start, and for cutting the session on time, but short technically. But I do have to go to another workshop. So I hope you found this session really, really valuable. I hope it's given you some things to think about with what you're building, and hopefully some of you will be moving on to the accelerator as well, where I'm sure you're going to gain even more kind of insights like this. So everyone, we have one more session this week, and that is tomorrow. So check out the schedule for that one, and I also post about it on Discord. And that will be, I think, the final time we see you before the submission deadline, which is on Sunday. So good luck, everyone, with your building, and I will see you all very soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Thanks, guys.